Well, greetings and salutations, and welcome back for the paranormal side of this channel. Before we get into today's paranormal side, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and my merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. The links to Patreon and PayPal are in the description below. My merch is displayed directly under this video. Also, Dogman, Frightening Encounters, Volume 1, 2, and 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, the links to which are also in the description as well. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's take that walk on the paranormal side. Shall we? Today's first experience on the paranormal side. This is not my experience, but an experience of a family friend of ours. It happened probably about 10 years ago, but it is still one of the most terrifying paranormal experiences I have ever heard. My mom had this friend who was the father of a little boy. He was about 5 or 6 at the time of this experience. For a few years, he had been saying that he could see what he described as dinosaurs or some kind of creatures that were, in short, scaled or reptilian in appearance. He would see them all of the time, and as you expected, his parents thought it was an imaginary friend type of thing. This went on for a while with no harm coming from it, so they largely just ignored it as a childhood phase. Well, one weekend, the kid's dad was helping his sister out on a DIY project and brought him along. The kid was outside playing in the garden while they were in the kitchen when suddenly the kid ran in, unable to breathe. They thought he was choking on something as there was nothing around his neck. Everyone started to freak out and panic, trying to get him to spit up whatever he had swallowed. Nothing appeared to work. His lips actually started to go blue, and they were about to call an ambulance when he suddenly took a massive breath of air. After a few minutes, he seemed to recover from whatever had happened, but when he had calmed down, a reddish mark slowly began to emerge around his neck. Eventually, it morphed into a band of bruising, like you'd expect to see on someone who had been hung or strangled with a cord. When he was asked what had happened, the boy said he had been playing with his dinosaur friends outside when one of them began to strangle him. He described the feeling, a burning sensation around his neck where it held him. The bruising lingered for a while before it eventually faded, but they never found a logical explanation for where it had come from. But after that, the boy never saw the dinosaurs ever again. Today's second experience on the paranormal side. What really fascinates me is that different cultures and different geographical regions have different paranormal experiences. Like in the United States, most of the stories are about ghosts. In my country, the Middle East, Islamic religion, I have heard countless stories about demons, which I honestly believe all have a logical explanation, but not one about ghosts. Here, people strongly believe in demons. It's even something mentioned in our holy book. I have lived in a couple of towns in different parts of my country, and as said, everyone has their stories about demons, but not ghosts. I've never had direct contact with demons, but I don't believe in them either. One of my closest friends had a personal experience where he heard demons having some kind of celebration in a nearby abandoned mill. Also, in my mother's village, almost everyone claims to have had an experience with them. We used to live in my grandmother's house in said village for a few months when I was a teenager. Her house was small, really old, when surrounded by land. She would never let any of us take a shower past dark, sleep alone in a room, or sleep when a mirror is in the room. She always carried a metal medallion with her and always slept with a knife or some metal object next to her. They believe it's to protect them against demons, but whenever I asked her about demons and that stuff, she would change the subject. My mother does some of these things and is so afraid she never answers anything regarding demons. Personally, never had any experiences with them in that house, but every night a sound like marching horses would come out of the attic, like some people were walking in the attic wearing hooves. But my mother and grandmother said it was just rats. I can't rule out anything, but I think logically it was the sound of rats. Today's third experience on the paranormal side. My family owns a farmhouse in Ireland. It's an extremely rural area. The house experienced some paranormal activity in the past. The living room sits directly over a path people would take to the beach, to either church or coffin ships or something else. We believed these famine victims continued to walk through the house. During the 1900s through 1920s, I can't remember, my great-grandmother or my great-great-grandmother heard noises downstairs. She'd rush down to see the impossible. The Sacred Heart lamp, which is literally screwed into the wall, was ripped out. The coals and ashes from the fire had been strewn about. The room was absolutely trashed. Terrified, she rushed back upstairs and stayed there for the remainder of the night. In the morning, the room was untouched, perfect, as if it had not been trashed the night before. The house experienced many more experiences over the coming months and possibly years. I come from a very Catholic family, so this house was blessed. The activity only ceased as a step was built. A small pathway winds to the side of the house. A step was put next to it, so the spirits would take the path not to the house. My grandmother always told me to not ever remove the stone. You would go on, but there's something scarier. Something happened right now that I fear. It's a very dense, though quite small patch of forest. Whenever I enter, I am filled with dread. Makes me, quite frankly, want to soil my pants. I never feel alone out there. As soon as I smell that wretched smell, kind of rotting flesh, I hightail it out of there because I know it's close. It felt evil, malicious, and I don't know. I didn't know it had a physical body until I saw it. It was nighttime, and I was looking out the window of my room. It looked like a person, a rotting person, a corpse. It was long and gangly, and its arms looked like they had been pulled out of the sockets, and the elbows jutted out. Its legs also looked disjointed. Its skin looked gray and sort of translucent. I couldn't tell the gender. I don't think it even had one. It had a horrible sunken face. Its eyes were so sunken I couldn't see them, but I could see the light reflecting off of them when it looked at me. I've never been more scared in my entire life when we locked eyes. Not when I split my head open, not when I lost my dog, not when I watched the news. I could properly see its face now. Its face did not have human features. Its nose, well, it didn't have a nose. 2 slits in its face. Its cheekbones jutted out. It had no lips, but its mouth spread from ear to ear and was filled with rotten, brown, chipped, and blunt teeth. My stomach dropped and I felt physically ill. Soon afterwards, I was physically sick. I immediately shut the curtains and prayed. I prayed and prayed and prayed for what seemed like hours. I did feel better afterward. When I left the house the next morning, it looked like an animal's claw marks outside the door. I knew it had to be real and not a dream. But to convince myself that last night, I went to the edge of the forest. Praying as I went, I also had holy water, rosary beads, anything I could get my mitts on, and sure enough, there were 2 deep, unhuman footprints in the mud. I was terrified, and when I looked up, I felt its gaze again, like this time it would get me. I ran. I'm not athletic, and I'm kinda chubby. But geez, I vaulted over that 3-foot high fence and ran up that hill to the house. I never ever go to that forest anymore. And a funny feeling tells me I am safe as long as I don't go to the forest, especially at night. I don't know what's in there. I know it doesn't want me specifically, just people that wander in too far. If demons exist, this one, and I hope you all never meet it. Today's fourth paranormal experience. When I was a teenager, me and 2 of my friends were helping my mom bring in the groceries. It was dusk, late summer. The sky was getting dark. Out of thin air, a massive black dog appears. It was the size of a very, very large wolf. But it was not a wolf, it was clearly a black dog of some sort. It looked very much like the Grim from Harry Potter, is the closest thing I can describe it to. We all froze and stared at it. It happened super fast. It was just standing there in between us and the car looking at us. What made it a supernatural event was that the dog was a holograph, or at least it appeared that way. The outline of its body seemed to glow and shift, almost like a computer glitch. Its eyes seemed to glow this yellowish light from within. Then it ran straight into the side of the house and disappeared into thin air. Me and my friends all looked at each other and were like, "Did you see that?" Obviously, the black dog is an omen and is popular in European folklore in the United States, but there has been known sightings of great black dogs throughout my country. Today's fifth experience on the paranormal side. This is my first-hand account involving some strange phenomenon I have yet to be able to explain. I'm not from this area in which these strange things occurred. It all started on a Sunday in August of 2013 after myself and my pregnant wife had been to church that morning in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. We decided to take a spontaneous trip. We drove until we ended up in Paducah. Being impulsive, we decided against our initial range and hopped over to Illinois to explore the Shawnee National Forest. We had been driving for about 30 minutes through thick woods when the tree line broke and we came across a little standalone general store attached to a non-operational lodge. My wife and I, of course, had to stop. It was so charming and old. And though it didn't occur to us until later, something was a little off. In the back of the store area, there was a separate unlit room for very old-looking things. There were odds and ends you'd expect to see in a 19th century manner, as well as some very old white dresses for little girls, along with a very old black and white photos of little girls the dresses belonged to. I did not touch anything, and the only thing my wife touched was something resembling a hand mirror. Only in place of reflective glass was what looked like a blackboard. We had a laugh at the strangeness of it and moved on. There was a wooden cutout with a cartoon pig painted on it, and as pigs were my wife's favorite animal, she wanted me to take her picture. I took out my iPhone camera, and as soon as I moved the camera into position, the entire screen turned purple. And the screen split horizontally for about half a second. I had never seen this happen. I tried to get the camera to recreate the glitch, which it did, but only pointing at the pig. I tried to capture a screenshot, but no luck. I couldn't get it to trigger again. I joked, "Haha, it's a ghost," and we kept moving on with our day. No sooner had we pulled away in the car when she brought to my attention a faint scratch on her leg. I examined it closely and assured her that surely she must have brushed up against something by the river earlier. As we moved through the forest, which was uncannily dark for midday, She told me that she had another scratch near the first one, which definitely had not been there a few minutes ago. She was freaked out, and while I was still dismissive, I was starting to become unsettled. This happened again. We crossed the ferry back to Kentucky. In a bit of a panic at this point, I pulled over and we stared at her leg and watched until 3 admittedly sloppy X's had faded into existence from nothing onto her leg. Now, we had just seen The Conjuring in theaters a few weeks prior and remembered hearing that demons use 3s as mocking the Holy Trinity. While it was some faint, oddly formed scratches, we were deeply horrified. I can attest that these came from nothing with seemingly no cause, the last of which was almost a right angle, totally unnatural looking. This occurred in Pope County, Illinois, and the store in question is the Bay City General Store. I'm not sure if it's related to these phenomenon, but that was the only place we had gotten out of the car. And our stop there immediately proceeded to start the strangeness. Now, I'm not a believer in the paranormal, nor am I a denier. But I know what we saw and experienced that day was 100% real and without reasonable explanation. Today's 6th paranormal experience. Well, something's up with Illinois. No, I'm just kidding. When I was around 16, I lived in a rural town in central Illinois near Starved Rock and had an experience with an unknown mysterious animal. We lived at the edge of town, and there's a large field directly to our right of our home, and a set of train tracks behind our backyard and a line of forest. As kids without much to do in a small town, we would walk these tracks pretty frequently, and would often run into other kids doing the same. It was a pretty cool area actually, with all of the nature and trees, and until that day was even a nice escape to go for a long walk when stressed. Like any other time, we went down the tunnel of trees that led to the little path that would walk us down the embankment before the railroad tracks. We had a normal walk for about 10 minutes from there, just talking, chatting about our boyfriends and what our current favorite memes were. Some really 2011 memes. Once we reached the bridge over the tracks, it was about 3 blocks down from my house. That's when things started to get real strange. I found the carcass of a large 2-foot fish that had obviously been torn into pieces by some predators without much left but bone. Keep in mind that this is a little ways inland, and the river was still a good trek by foot and would require a large animal to carry a fish that size so far. A little down, the breadcrumb trail of white fluff scattered through the tall grass on the opposite side of the tracks. To me, it looked like an animal had been hurt, and me being the animal lover but stupid 16-year-old one, I thought it was a grand idea to keep investigating further. I followed the trail of fluff which led me to a fresh deer leg and nothing else. Just past the deer leg, then about 15 feet or so, I walked directly up the opposite embankment from the original to see a large den-like tunnel. Immediately walking up to it, I felt like I should not be there, and something else felt just the same. I retreated backwards, feeling that I should not turn my back on the den. Scared out of my mind at that point, me and my friend decided it was probably best to get back to, because God knows what else we would find or would find us. It was about 30 minutes before dark. On our way back, though, we were not alone. We heard grass moving on the embankment the whole way beside us on the side that we would have to cross over to get to my yard. You could hear it slowly and deliberately moving through the grass, and every now and then a few rapid ones. If we moved quicker, we felt hunted. With no weapons but rocks on the tracks, we hurled a few and shouted to get whatever it was away far enough so that we could go back up the embankment. This worked, and we thought that was that once we reached my yard. This is the part where I could go back and slap myself. We were so stupid. We decided that we would hang out on my trampoline that had a clear view of the field next door for the next hour until my friend's mom came to pick her up. The sun had fallen to the point where only shapes and different levels of darkness were clear on the field. Suddenly, something large, dark, and low to the ground came out of the tree line and onto the field. It stopped and turned to us. It was frozen. I was frozen and immediately told my friend to stay still. We could only see the darkness of the creature's fur and its movements, slightly cat-like, stalking. To this point, I say, oh, cougar or something. However, I'm not sure if they had been found in that area for a very long time. The thing that threw me most was the sound it made. It sounded angry, and that was for sure, but the thing made a low huffing pant like a bull blowing air through its nose before a charge. I turned to my friend and said, run. We booked it to the house, and to this day I feel like something has helped me and was forcing my feet to get there quicker than I could. I've seen plenty of deer, coyote, and fox, and all there, but nothing this big or predatory. Nothing in the local fauna matches up, and I am extremely confused about what animals move like that and sound like that, plus be in the area. Here's an idea. Dogman. Today's seventh and final paranormal experience. This happened when I was 5 years old. It was one of those events that turned me completely inward, changing my personality and outlook on life. And I still feel like I am somehow stuck in a rabbit hole, maybe traumatized. It's as if something is incomplete and I keep coming back to it. What happened was I drowned in a pool when I was 5. I remember yelling for help underwater. And then one of my last thoughts was of being very angry with my mother for leaving me alone in the swimming pool. I hear a lot of near-death experiences that have to do with white lights and peaceful things that make you want to live more powerfully after. But mine was not of that nature. The last thing I remember before losing consciousness was a reptilian being, basically just a face. It was an intelligent face, and he seemed to be communicating with me, almost taunting me in a way. And the emotional imprint to me is as if he said, I own you. You are powerless. After this incident, I thought I had seen the devil. But what really disturbed me was that this was my only glimpse of life after death. It was very terrifying. I started doubting all values concerning life. I got into existential crisis where I became very concerned about whether or not I was the only being in existence. And whatever everyone was just a figment of my imagination. A very lonely thought, and one that I had the hardest time shaking. Today I feel like I'm just not reaching my potential as a human. I have so little to show for my life. It's not what I have hoped at the age of 28. And I realize a lot of people could echo this sentiment. But whenever I reflect on how I can really get into self-improvement, I inevitably return to this event instinctively, as if there is something to solve in it before I can move on and really tap my being. I have a few perspectives on it, and I'd appreciate hearing others or any thoughts pertaining to this. I saw a shaman/hypnotist a few years ago who told me this being had latched on to me and was draining me. She performed a ritual and I felt a bit better. Maybe it did improve the situation, but I still feel blocked. I've heard these beings feed on negative emotion like fear and hate, so I imagine if one were to parasitically attach to you, it would really drain your good feelings. That's what happened when I was 5. I was happy and lucky, super friendly, talkative, And then it was like I became a shade of myself and my personality inverted. Nowadays, I'm not so talkative, not so excitable, but I feel very much that I should be and want to be. I am not okay not being friendly and initiating and upbeat. I feel as if that is truly my personality, and my own sullen, standoffish behavior makes me feel uncomfortable, as if I just cannot access who I am, but I am still there. It feels like all impulses, all that energy that would fire my personality on the correct cylinders is being blocked or rerouted. Basically, for 20 odd years, I've been waiting for some kind of rebirth or resurrection. But it's been so long now, and I'm uncertain as how I can get there. Another way of looking at this, that the reptilian represents my root chakra and all of my associations that entails. I don't believe the entity and the chakra explanation are mutually exclusive. To sum it up, I feel like this is still an unresolved issue. I don't think talking about it will help. I don't know what will help. I think I have to unlock something energetically, but don't know what. Or maybe I have to internalize this or externalize it, or just see it for what it is, so that it can be comfortable with my own internal energy. Alright guys, that ends tonight's paranormal side of this channel. How about it? 3 uploads in one day. Wow. That actually felt really good. Super tired though. But it was fun doing because I know that you guys enjoyed it, and I enjoy narrating. Because every time I narrate, I learn more. I catch things. I start thinking about these encounters. If I were to read them not aloud to myself, but just to myself, I don't think I'd pick up certain pieces that I do. Well, I don't know. Thanks, guys. You guys rock. And with that, please be kind to each other, and may the Great Spirit watch over us all and guide us through that path we call life. Oh yeah, really quick. Someone commented that you mean Jesus. No, I mean the Great Spirit. You know, we each have our own higher power. And if Jesus is yours, Jesus is yours. If mine's the Great Spirit, mine's the Great Spirit. If I want to pass on my blessings or my kindness to you, I'm going to say, may the Great Spirit. So, you know, take it for what it's worth, but I couldn't believe someone said that. That was just such like a touch-hole-ish thing to say. You know, like, it'd be like saying you mean Jesus to a Muslim, you know, or whatever. Just take it for what it's worth. I'm wishing you blessings, bro. Or whatever, gal. I don't know. They? Attack helicopter? I don't know. Whatever they want to be labeled as. Anyway, have a good day.